Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. We've got something more positive to talk about. It's actually been a pretty good week for Tottenham Hotspur. Two very good, especially attacking performances against Wolfsburg AC and in Burnley on Sunday. So yeah, let's have a chat where it's not full of negatives and things that must be better and stuff like that. Isn't that going to be an absolute revelation? And also going to talk about a little interview I did in the week, if you didn't notice, with a certain Tanguy Ndombele as well. But let's start off with the Burnley match. Obviously, we have to massively caveat it with the fact that it was Burnley, and Burnley are not one of the world's best teams, of course, and everyone's been very quick who wants to quickly play it all down and saying, oh, it's only Burnley. But Burnley are no mugs. They absolutely are not. And I think I probably would have said it in the last video. The worry in terms of confidence from things like set pieces, the way that Burnley can be very organised in their setup and the way they also attack, that was always going to be a little bit of a threat, especially for a Spurs team low on confidence. And let's get it straight. The key thing for Tottenham Hotspur on Sunday was to win the game. I think Mourinho even said it afterwards. Had they won with a 94th minute winner, that would have been absolutely fine. But the fact that they did it with a little bit of style, a little bit of swagger, I'd say, as well. And probably, 4-0 probably flattered Burnley. It could have been 6 or 7 with the chances that Spurs had. I think there's something to be taken away from it. I think certainly the players will have, in training this week ahead of the Fulham game, will have a little bit more about them. It's always quite a happy camp at Spurs as it is, but after a victory like that, I think it would have reminded the players, more so than anyone else, that you've got the quality to win games like that. They tore Burnley apart. Absolutely tore them. And Burnley have given some teams some tough games, especially, I'd say, in latter months where they've started to kind of find their own rhythm again. But, Nick Pope, saw some quotes from him where he just went, the quality in the transitions and the shots, the finishing was just too much for us. And Sean Dyche said, obviously we were surprised that Spurs have been going through this bad spell, but you just saw today that they were absolutely out of it. And I think the Europa League wins have kind of been important just to kind of keep reminding players slightly, look, you can do this. But this one was a reminder of how well they can do it. And I just thought, it's early days, still got a lot of momentum they need to take from that, and obviously in the games ahead. But it was so fantastic to watch, to be honest. Obviously, as I always say, very privileged to be inside the stadiums while, yourselves and the fans cannot be in there yet. Sometimes it feels a little bit more like a chore than a privilege, but on Sunday, yeah, I think the members of the press, as well as all the staff involved, just really enjoyed the game. It was just, obviously the early start helped, but I think for me it was about seeing, early start, the goal, not so much the early kickoff, although it was a little bit earlier. For me, I think the Bale, Son, Kane trio, actually getting to see it working in action in exactly the way I think we all hoped it would, was probably the most exciting thing. I wrote a piece a while back, and this isn't to kind of, blow my own horn or anything, or blow my own trumpet. It's more to say that I think it's kind of the attitude I think they were taking within Spurs. I wrote a piece a couple of months back. It was about maybe 6 weeks ago, something like that. Someone I'm sure will find it. Where I said about Bale, I said, it's really early for everyone to just kind of say, he's done, what a waste of money, what a terrible loan this has been. Because, I don't want to go over ground too much, but, 2 years of very little football. A guy that's absolutely, his confidence was in the basement about not only being wanted, but also in his own body, and his worry that if he opened his legs and ran, that he might pull something. And I think it's been such a gradual process. And Mourinho was actually asked about it after the game. You do kind of, in hindsight, slightly readjust and look at things, whether Mourinho's management of him has actually been quite good. Whether throwing him in early and trying to flog him when he wasn't quite ready, perhaps he would have tried to push himself too early and picked up an injury, or it just wouldn't have worked. But for whatever reason, whether it's the player, whether it's Mourinho, whether it's just purely circumstances, the last 4 games, I'd say including the cameo against Man City, he's just got better and better and better. And,
yesterday was the best we've seen since he came. And in those 4 games, is it 4? It might even be 5 if you include the Man City. I'm trying to think. Yeah, it is, because it's Man City, little cameo, Wolfsburg both games, West Ham and Man United and Burnley. And I think, was it 7 goal contributions within the last 4 games? 4 goals, 3 assists. And he was just, it was bits of old Bale. I won't lie, there was one moment, and it wasn't any of the goals, it wasn't an assist, where I just turned to my colleague next to me and just went, that's Gareth Bale. And it was, he took a ball, I think it was either Aurier or Højbjerg won the ball back, passed it to him, and he looked up, and he kind of saw there weren't many options on, but he had Charlie Taylor, the Burnley defender, in front of him. And he just thought, why not? And he knocked it one side of him and he ran around right down the touchline around the opposite side of him, picked up the ball on the other side. He surged past him. Any worries that his pace maybe isn't there at 31 was just blown out of the way. And it was, for me, that was trademark classic Bale. It was reminiscent of, obviously not to the degree of it, but it had little kind of echoes of the runs that he used to do for Spurs, obviously the famous night against Inter Milan where he absolutely destroyed Maicon, or even for Real Madrid, anyway you remember, I'm sure you will, the Copa del Rey final goal, when he went so wide to get around, I can't remember who it was, I think it was Piqué, maybe Piqué, no, it might have been too long ago, but I don't know, it might have been Piqué, so I'm sure one of you will tell me. Anyway, he knocked the ball around him, ran out of the pitch so far. He practically went outside the stadium, got a calamari sandwich, came back in and back onto the pitch again. It was so wide. Got the ball back on the other side, ran through on goal and slotted it home. And it was just one of those kind of probably the best like Classico and in a final goals you'll see. This obviously wasn't to that degree, but it was just a little reminder of, that's what Gareth Bale does. And what I find kind of fascinating as well about Gareth Bale right now is that this isn't that Gareth Bale. It isn't. Of course it's not going to be. We've said this a million times. It's never going to be the 2013 version of Gareth Bale. That Gareth Bale was quite a bit, frankly, a little bit of a phenomenon. He was a little bit of the Ronaldo-esque idea of, he was a bit of a physical machine. He had pace, he had power, but he also had an incredible technique and work rate allied to it all. Whereas now, obviously, he's 31. There's going to be different elements to his game, different side to him. And what I really like, actually, is that he's now no longer a winger. He's kind of like a winger/playmaker. He chooses his moments to get forward, and in the other moments, he'll either cut inside or just sits back. So you're going to get, I think this game on Sunday really showcased how both sides of those work. So the kind of picking his moments to run, you saw, 67 seconds in, he gets onto a Son pass into the box, touches it home. Second goal, sits back, watches the play from behind, and almost like a quarterback plays that, cuts across, plays that 50-yard ball into the path of Kane, and Kane obviously goes on, hits the ball, slightly deflected, but still, all count. And I think that was Kane's 22nd goal of the season. So there was that. Then the third one, another cutting inside, came across the pitch, found Reguilon on the left, who crossed in, Lucas Moura fires it home. And then the fourth goal was all about the pace again. It was keeping track with Son up the pitch, and then cutting inside and just curling that beautiful shot. Pope just watched it. It was just like, oh man. It was just one of those situations where, and we were all like, ooh. It was a bit like, I've said this before, I do this about on Ndombele moments, and it was lovely to have one of those at Bale. It's just like, ooh, that was class. So you're seeing these two different sides of him, the winger and the playmaker. And I really like this side of Bale. It's, obviously we've got the massive caveat of we've got to keep him fit. Spurs have to keep him fit. He can't be overplayed. Even if you're going to play him, start him once a week, say, and maybe bring him on for the end of another game in midweek or something. I'd say if you do that, there's enough about him. If you're going to be playing him, certainly in the Premier League, say every weekend, I think that would be enough to surge, absolutely catapult Tottenham up the table. Because I think if you can keep him fit and in this form, that's... I'd say, I was going to kind of say maybe a similar effect to what he did with Spurs in the season before he left under Villas-Boas. But what I'd say is you've probably got now such a quality of player alongside him that is kind of can share the load slightly. And I found it fascinating. Harry Kane clearly does not want to be the second in the bill, as it were. He wants his name at the top of the credits. He wants to be
on the poster, Harry Kane at the very top. And I love the fact that while he is happy, excited to play alongside Gareth Bale, especially Gareth Bale in that form, he still wants to be the main man. And there was little moments in that, especially first half, when they were having competitions, you could see on the pitch of who could hit or slice the nicest cross-field passes. They were both doing them. Some of Kane's were absolutely sublime out to, I think it was Aurier, I think it was one to Son. It was almost a bit, no, look at me kind of thing. And that's exactly what Spurs needs. Kane, not that he gets comfortable, but he needs someone to push him. And I kind of feel maybe earlier in the season that was what Son was doing as well. Son was pushing Kane's level on. Of course, they were absolutely complementing each other and helping each other out. But I felt Kane was almost like, why is everyone talking about Son? It needs to be about me. And it was beautiful. And now, if you could get all three of those players doing that, what are you going to get from it? I mean, word on Son as well. I thought Son was superb on Sunday. I thought, he's had a kind of bit of up and downs, I'd say, after an amazing start of the season. I think he's been up and down slightly in recent months. But I thought kind of getting back to top draw Son, I felt. I'd say, I don't want to say lucky for Bale's first goal, because the intention, I think, of what he was doing would have resulted in what either way. But I think if you watch it closely back, he is perhaps looking for Kane in the box. I think he's trying to do a different knocking the ball into the box. But actually, if you watch it very closely, he kind of scuffs the ball, knocks it into the ground, and it kind of bounces up. Either way, like I say, I don't think that really takes away from the ingenuity of the pass, the ability to read the runs, because I think either Kane or Bale would have got it, whatever he did with it. So it's definitely not detracting from the assist. And then I felt as the game wore on, he could have ended up with 5 or 6 assists. He just was back to that breaking Son, that taking players on and looking up for other people. Played in Lucas Moura for a couple of really good chances. Kane had a couple. Obviously, Bale's second goal with another assist for him. And he had a decent shot himself. I think he pretty much carved out himself, really, and then Pope pushed it away really well down low. So seeing those three perform like that, I use this expression too much, but on paper, you look at that front three, Bale, Kane and Son, that should be the best three in the Premier League. I'd go as far to say that. I've seen since the Roy Keane kind of having a public moment on telly. I know part of his game is he likes to kind of say controversial things. But even I think he massively walked back. I think, didn't he say something like, there's no one in that team that would get any other team, or the top teams in the Premier League, and it was pointed out Kane and Son. He was like, oh yeah, they would. And it's like, but for me, Kane and Son can get in the top teams. I think Gareth Bale, if he can continue to be at that level he was on Sunday and in recent games, I think that front three it could potentially be the best one. Obviously, you've got Mane, Firmino, Salah, of course, and you've got Man City, the riches they have with, Sterling or Jesus or Aguero or Foden, all the players that can come in there. But as a trio, that has the potential to be, if not the best, one of the best in Europe, or on the Premier League. So it's just, I'm aware that I've gone on a little bit about it, but it's lovely to be excited about something again with Tottenham as well. And I think I really felt that in the way they played. Spurs, 16 shots, they had 7 on target, which is better on target ratio, obviously, than the West Ham game. Well, far better. And there could have been more. There really could have been more. And you look at it, and Lucas Moura, I don't want to do down, because I'm tough on Lucas Moura. I'll freely admit that, because I think, this is like, I'm not comparing myself to Mourinho in any way, shape or form, but it's a similar ethos of kind of when you're tough on a player, it's because you believe they can be better and they're capable of being better. And I feel that with Lucas. I've always say this to you, I want him to run at a defence, not into it. I want him to have an end product rather than just aimless running. And really delighted to see in the last 2 games, back-to-back Premier League goals. That was my thing as well with him, was that I'm finding in the Europa League he's tearing teams apart, he's scoring goals, but then when the level steps up in the Premier League, he's maybe been found wanting slightly, but we know he can do it. And I was really pleased. I thought he was really good against Burnley. His goal was superb. Lovely take, controlled the ball, fine finish in the bottom corner. Again, could have had a hat-trick. There was one lovely touch around a defender to get him into the box. I can't remember if it was Tarkowski or me. I can't remember who it was. We touched it around him and then just really annoyingly almost hit it straight into the chest of Pope right in front of him when he had the whole of the goal to aim for. And then there was that Son one where he kind of teed him up and he ballooned it over the bar. But those aside, I thought he did very well. And I thought it was really a good showing from him. I think another strength of Lucas is when Spurs are looking to play on the counter with the transitions and everything, he's got that pace to get them away in those early kind of crossing the halfway line moments. And he played very well. Yeah, I do wonder whether, obviously I'm not going to go really into the Wolfsburger game. I know it's quite old now, but obviously it was after my last video. But I think Dele Alli, certainly against Wolfsburger, was fantastic. Kind of got a little bit of a cameo on Sunday. Mourinho's trying to get his fitness. I saw some people getting really upset that he didn't start again. Mourinho did, to be fair to him, make it quite clear after the Wolfsburger game that he was unlikely to start again at the weekend because his fitness isn't quite there yet. But I do wonder if you can get Dele Alli fully firing, because Dele Alli will want to be he will want to be the guy that supplies the bullets for the guns for these front three to fire home. So if Dele Alli can kind of get back to those levels, get up to where we know he can be, that's frightening. If you think of Son, Ali, Bale all playing at top form, playing behind Harry Kane top form, that's devastating. You're then getting into a front four with all of them. Obviously, football as it is, you very rarely get all four firing at the same time. But the beauty of that is that you don't need them all to be firing because there's so much quality there that even if one or two of them are, you're probably going to win the game. Or at least score goals. So Dele obviously I think is in there. And, Steven Bergwijn couldn't even get on the bench. Steven Bergwijn I think Mourinho, it feels he just needs that goal. He just needs that goal, Bergwijn, and then he's got everything else about his game has been really good. It's just about finding that goal and then his confidence will come on. Eric Lamela's been playing really well recently. I know he's got his haters, as it were, his detractors, but will always fight for Eric Lamela because I always think he adds something. I think his key thing has been staying fit, but touch wood, it's over there. It's been a run of games. It's been a little run now since Lamela's had an injury. Please don't have just jinxed him. But you've got those. You've got Giovanni Lo Celso, who would be back in. Hopefully, maybe for the Zagreb game. I mean, he's back in training. They're heavily protecting him in training at Hotspur Way, so he's not really in a position where he's going to get injured. And obviously, until he's fully training without any of the restrictions, he can't really play matches. But potentially, I mean, it's a tough one. Mourinho's kind of seems to be indicating more next week as a potential coming back. But you never know. Like with regular, it's maybe he looks and puts him on the bench for maybe Palace, something like that, or depending on how his week goes. Even the Fulham game, I just wonder if that comes a bit early. But he will be involved. And you've got Ndombele's creativity as well. And suddenly, a team absolutely lacking in creativity has far too many options. This is why, people were saying about Bergwijn not being on the bench, or even Roden in defence not being on the... Suddenly, there's so many players to fit on that bench. It's suddenly not a case of, he must hate him this week. What's he done wrong? Has he fallen out with him? It's just a case of so much quality, and you kind of, and Vinicius, I've even forgotten Vinicius in there. You've got so much to package on that bench. It actually is almost as difficult as selecting your starting 11, making sure you get the balance of the bench exactly right. But I was really, really, really pleased with that. It's just, like I say, it's a case now with Bale, especially, of keeping him fit. You need, I think, when I come on the playmaker angle, I think Spurs were starting to rely on Kane being a playmaker, which he can do that, but we kind of want him just up there scoring goals. So to have Bale able to perform that role when he kind of pulls back in, to have Lo Celso coming back to do it. I think Lo Celso, in his early games, Mourinho will do a similar thing to what he did with Ndombele while I was trying to get him fit, was playing in more advanced roles in, because Lo Celso can play in any of the three of the roles behind Kane. So he can fit into there. I think he'll give Ali a bit of competition in the number 10 slot as well. And I think when Bale doesn't play, that's when you could see Lo Celso playing on the right. And also he can then, as he gets fitter, come back into a central role as well and be able to give Ndombele some rest, or play a 3 in there perhaps with Højbjerg, Ndombele and him. But yeah, it is really good to see. I mean, was quite interesting with I touched on Højbjerg and Ndombele there. They had a very set role against Burnley, very specific. They, if you watched Ledley King did an interview afterwards where he touched on it as well. The plan was for those two to mop up every second ball going. So the defence would try to win the first ball, and then Højbjerg and Ndombele's primary task was to mop up the second ball, and then they could put Spurs away on the transition. And it worked so well. Those two mopped up so much. What I found really disappointing was when I watched the highlights back on Match of the Day 2, they showed Spurs' fourth goal from after a really cool thing that Ndombele had done. I think he won the ball back, and then it was played to him, and he played this first-time flick, kind of no-look flick behind him to Reguilon, who then found Son. Son broke up the pitch, passed to Bale, and he scored that lovely goal. And I just thought, oh, man, just give it an extra second of footage, and you would have got that. It was beautiful. Hopefully anyone that was watching the game on the telly at the time would have seen it. But, yeah, I thought that was a really key role the two of them performed. And probably when... maybe by me at the time as well. I'd probably lump myself in with that as well. Maybe a little bit unnoticed in the kind of excitement of the attacking stuff, kind of almost forgetting where the attacks began. They were superb. And that kind of just allows me, just briefly to go off on a tangent, because I was very fortunate this week on, what day did I do it? Friday, to have a really long chat, good, almost 45 minutes chat with Tanguy Ndombele. It was myself and Dave Heitner, a really top journalist for the Guardian Observer. We both sat down and just chatted with him over Zoom. Obviously, we can't do it in person, but it was terrific. It was with a translator, although I would say that was purely because Tanguy wanted to make sure his answers were in full, and that was more for us to make sure that we got as much as possible, which is, really cool. And I mean, to be honest, you could tell that he understood the questions pretty much 90-95% of the time. And the translator, a chap called Rob, was superb. And what I really liked was that, for one reason or another, we kind of struck up a really good rapport, Dave and myself and Rob, the translator, with Tanguy. And he became very open. And this is a guy who's not particularly comfortable doing media, doesn't enjoy it. Won't see a lot of him. I think this was pretty much... I spoke to him out in Singapore a couple of weeks after he joined in his first pre-season. But I think this was pretty much since then his first kind of major UK interview of everything that's happened since. He's done a couple of bits in France, probably with journalists he maybe knew from his time in Lyon that he was comfortable with. But this was his first kind of one. And he was open. What I'd say about him, it's quite interesting. He's a very clever chap. You can tell the way he talks. There's a real intellect behind what when he's thinking about how to construct what he replies. But also, there's an honesty to a degree. I'd say someone like Danny Rose, who's fascinating to interview, but perhaps just not crosses a line, but maybe goes to a certain extent with his answers where you kind of think, that's maybe not the greatest thing to say. But whereas with Tanguy, it was very much, he'd reach a certain point and then he'd know. There was even one line he said to me and something, it's like, there's certain things that went on inside the club that you know about, and there's certain things that went on inside the club in the last year that you don't know about. And I think the fact that they're not known about probably means they should probably stay not known about. But that was only once. Everything else, he was very good. Because I'd been told a little story that when he first joined for Tottenham, on the day he joined, he didn't expect to join Tottenham. As in, not he wasn't going to come, but he hadn't expected to actually sign that day. So I was told that he'd rocked up with a very interesting hairstyle. So I put that to him and he cracked up. He was like, yep, it's all true. I turned up from my holidays because I was told, you've got to get to Spurs. It's kind of now or never. And he said, and I dyed my hair bright blue on holiday. And so it got to the stage where they kind of essentially, he had to sign the contract. That was it that day. And then he had to do all the, the unveiling photos. And he was like, I've got blue hair, like bright blue. And he said, so we kind of came to a compromise where they just said it was fine, just wear your cap. So if you were wondering at the time, if you probably thought to yourself, oh my God, he's so laid back, he's wearing a cap in his unveiling photos. That's purely to disguise the fact that he had bright blue hair. And he was fascinating. There's really good stuff on his relationship with Mourinho, which is repaired now. He spoke about the lockdown meeting when Mourinho knocked on his door. He said he was asked kind of on a scale of 1 to 10, how shocked were you to see suddenly Mourinho outside your door wanting to go for a run? And he was like, 10. Absolutely 10. He spoke about his tough times. He kind of admitted some responsibility for it, little bits. He said there were things he knew he could do better, but ultimately he had, I'd say the most good things he had to say were about Daniel Levy, actually. He asked Daniel Levy to leave twice. He asked him to leave once. What he also did say, and this is quite interesting, when I spoke to him out in Singapore, I asked him how his pre-season, how he enjoyed it. And he just turned to me, and in the only words of English he used, because Moussa Sissoko was translating the rest, he said, very hard. He was like, absolutely, like you could tell. And he admitted that pre-season kind of broke him. He said within a couple of weeks, he was phoning his friends back in France and saying, I want to come home. This is too hard, kind of thing. And he even admitted he thinks the shock to his body, because we mustn't forget with Tanguy, is that only a couple of years ago, 4 years ago, he was playing in the 5th division or 5th level of French football, which is not fitness-wise. He didn't, he was in the Guingamp Academy, then got released, and then so he hasn't really had that little block in the middle. He didn't have the years that forge you physically and fitness-wise as a footballer. So he thinks that the shock of that Pochettino pre-season actually contributed probably to a lot of the injuries, little niggling problems that he picked up for the rest of that season, which then snowballed into other issues that he had with Mourinho as well. But yeah, he said back then he wanted to leave, but then he actually told Daniel Levy towards the end of last season that, I want to go because he was having such a tough time. Mourinho wasn't picking him. He told me his darkest time was after the restart. So after that lockdown meeting when Mourinho just wasn't picking him. I think he came off the bench twice briefly. And then he picked up a knee injury. And so he went to Levy. I had a meeting. I think you would have seen a bit of it in Amazon, on the Amazon documentary. But he told Levy he wanted to leave. And he said Levy just told him, no, you're just not going. He said, you're being stubborn. Essentially, kind of to paraphrase, we believe in you. Get your head down. He'll believe in you as well. And this is the thing. Mourinho, to be fair to him, has always said, I've never doubted his quality. I just doubted his motivation and his kind of professionalism in doing what he needs to do. And to be fair to absolutely credit, and this is what Mourinho says as well, absolute credit to Tanguy, he just got his head down and went for it. He admitted he got COVID in the pre-season. And that kind of, he didn't suffer too much from it, he said, but obviously that and the knee injury just slowed him down slightly, which is why his fitness in the early games of the season, he wasn't lasting much more than an hour, but he built, and we're to where we are now with Tanguy. And it was a lovely interview. It was really, I've been very fortunate to have some terrific interviews, some really connect really well with people, and you get really interesting stuff. And this for me was right up there. It was one of those. It was very honest. We had a real good chat about just the way he plays, the instinct with how he plays, the little turns he does and things like that. So I'll put the link after this down in the comments. I'll pin it to the top of the comments if you want to read it, if you haven't already. It's not by no means obligated to. But I would say if you like Tanguy Ndombele and you like the way he plays, it's hopefully the aim was to be a real insight into the way he thinks, the way he plays, why he is like he is. Because there was other little things. I'd been told that he's like players do. He's picked up the odd fines here and there in his first year and 18 months or so at Tottenham, because he's just a very laid back, nonchalant is the word that's always used about him, guy. And I said that to him. I said, does that your nonchalance, which looks awesome on the pitch at times, it's a bit Berbatov-esque. Does it ever get you in trouble behind the scenes? Do you pick up fines? And he just did this laugh, which absolutely told me he was about to fib. It's like, no, I don't pick up fines. And he said, but yes, I think my nonchalance can get taken the wrong way sometimes. He said, especially when I was younger, he said, I'm definitely way less nonchalant than I was. And he kind of said, if the fans like me being nonchalant on the pitch, then all the better, because, it's all part of the experience, I guess it was. So, yeah, hopefully lots of people saying very nice things about the interview, so hopefully that means it does give a bit of an insight. So please do have a little look at it. But yeah, no, Tanguy's top guy. He was so relaxed, sitting in a doorway, chatting to us over Zoom, and just it's lovely to see him happy and confident. he was a young player. He was only 21 when he joined, wasn't he? He was a young player that he's only 23 now, isn't he? Who suddenly had a new lifestyle, new culture, new football, new language, new teammates, was well away from his friends, and it was tough for him. Not everyone settles and adapts instantly. And I just think it's lovely to see where he is now. He's in a really good place. He's delighted to be at Spurs, so happy to be there. And he's just trying to show English football and the Spurs fans just how good he can be. So please, do have a read. I've only literally scratched the surface of the things he said. It's almost 3,000 word interview, real long kind of featurey thing. And he was fascinating, absolutely fascinating. But yeah, so back to the match. I want to talk about Davinson Sanchez. Another player who, not criticised to the degree Ndombele has been, but I don't know, he's got a lot of flack. Him and Eric Dyer, I think, have borne the brunt of a lot of the defensive criticism. Sometimes fair. I've always said this to you. I've always never really gone in as hard on Sanchez as everyone else, but I've always freely admitted I do think he's got one silly mistake in him at least a game, which is not good. But I think, I'm not going to go into it because I explained it quite a lot in the last video. I do think he's suffered from not having a leader to guide him alongside him on the pitch, as Jan Vertonghen was in that first season he came when Sanchez was brilliant. Don't let people underplay how good Sanchez was in his first season as a 21-year-old in the Premier League. We talk about Ndombele as a 21-year-old struggling. Sanchez came into the Premier League from arguably a weaker league than the French league, coming from the Eredivisie, and he came in, he smashed it. Massive games against Real Madrid, Cristiano Ronaldo, in the Premier League against the top teams, and he was superb. Pochettino said he could be, potentially be one of the best defenders in the world. This is not a guy who's a mug. He's not a bad defender. He's just suffered from having an ever-changing central defensive partnership. And even Mourinho, you can see, kind of left him out for a big old chunk of the middle of the season. And I think he started the last 4 Premier League games. And I felt that Sunday was a real sign of a reminder of the attacking players. I think this is a reminder of how good Davinson Sanchez can be. I asked Mourinho about him afterwards, and he said he was dominant, very dominant. And he was. Early in the game, sliding tackle to deny Jay Rodriguez could have had a shot on goal. Absolutely slid in, stopped him in a crucial moment. Vidra ran through before the break. Sanchez is the only one who's got the pace to run back and kind of headed him off and muscled him off the ball. Second half, he was making some superb interceptions and headers. He was throwing himself at set pieces. I think that was key. We knew set pieces was going to be an issue, but he absolutely dominated the box. I don't always think the Alderweireld-Sanchez partnership is the best, because I think one of them, whoever does it, doesn't always look entirely comfortable at playing on the left of the two. I still think another good thing about the Vertonghen-Sanchez or Vertonghen-Alderweireld partnership was that Vertonghen balanced it up by being a lefty. But I thought Sanchez was so good on Sunday. And it was just a little reminder that we just can't write these players off without looking at all the circumstances. I even had someone on Twitter, I think it was yesterday after I put up my talking points about the game, saying, "Oh, Sanchez was rubbish. What are you talking about?" And it's just like, sometimes you can get so stuck in a mindset about a player, and this goes for media, including myself as well as fans, you kind of almost can't take that viewpoint off when they have a really good game. And he was superb. Mourinho was delighted with him. He's utterly earned the right to start against Fulham. I think he might, purely because also I don't know whether Alderweireld will be able to do 3 games in a week, with his previous hamstring problems. So I thought Sanchez was superb. I thought there's this thing at the moment where, and I don't want to do down Joe Rodon, because I think Joe Rodon can be a very, very good player. But there's this thing right now where everyone's saying, "Oh, Joe Rodon, what a young, promising player. Oh, he's got to develop. Let's just give him the chances." Joe Rodon's 23. Davinson Sanchez is just over a year older. We're not talking about a washed-up 29-year-old, 30-year-old, someone that can't be worked with, can't be developed, can't be made into a top defender. He's 24 years old. He's quite a young defender. Defenders don't come into their prime until probably 28, I'd say. there's plenty to work with. In terms of the attributes, Sanchez has got all of it. It's just with him, it's decision making. And like I say, that comes from experience and having someone talking you through games as well, and Mourinho working with him. I am sure there will be comments under this video saying, you're talking rubbish, he's done, he's finished, get him out of my club and all of this. But I do think there's something there, and I will always stick up for Sanchez because I think the raw materials are there. I think he just needs to be guided, and he has to have confidence. We talk about Eric Dyer's confidence having gone, although Eric Dyer doesn't agree with that. But, a young player is also going to fit. He's just become a dad recently as well, so he's got all that going on in his personal life as well. Davinson Sanchez becoming a first-time father. So sometimes you just got to look at the whole picture, and that's what I try to do in my stuff, which is probably why you don't hear me going too extreme. Sometimes in either direction, although I like to be as positive as I can. But yeah, Davinson Sanchez, honestly, don't give up on him yet. I think you'll get more performances like Sunday if he's there's that belief in him. But yeah, people maybe have already made up their mind and they want a different defender to come in. I think I'd be more concerned about getting a left-footed player for the left-sided role. I think that's the key. That has to be sorted in the summer massively. But but just in terms of people saying why wasn't Joe Rodon on the bench, the problem is you've got Sanchez and Alderweireld starting. You then have Dyer and Davies on the bench. And Doherty, that's kind of all you need. You don't then need Rodon on there as well. Some people will argue Rodon should have started. Personally, I think if you're going to start in one of the 3 games this week, I'd say maybe Fulham's the better one, purely because he'll have played Fulham twice, maybe. I had a bit of an injury last year, I can't remember, I have to look, but he would have played Fulham in the Championship a lot, so that won't be a shock to the system as Premier League games can be. But he's one that there's definitely a project and needs to. They're kind of working with him. He's not only the fact that yes, you might say at 23 he's not a young defender, but he's also has never played at this kind of level. This is all very new to him. Whereas Sanchez, even playing for Ajax, he was still playing in Europa League final, and obviously came to Spurs and he was playing Champions League football pretty much from the off. So. Yeah, Joe Rodon is going to be a very talented player. I do believe that, but it's just about getting the management of his development right and kind of not ruining him. You look at someone like, say, John Stones. John Stones was pretty much written off at City, wasn't he? He was barely playing, and now he's back to being one of the best centre-backs in the Premier League right now. So sometimes these kind of young centre-backs, it's about decision making, and that grows with experience and age. So yeah, same with all of them. It's got to be applied to all of. Maybe even say for Dyer as well. I still think he's developing as a centre back. Whether he gets there, we'll see. But definitely a guy that still hasn't really learnt the craft of being a centre back entirely. But yeah, I'm off tangent there. It was more about Davinson Sanchez I want to talk about. Just a little shout out to Hugo Lloris, who had pretty much nothing to do because of how good the back line was. And just a quick note on that. Oh, so good to have Reguilon back as well. I'm no Davies hater, but I just feel Reguilon gives you that something extra going in both directions with the pace and the threat. And obviously an assist for him for Lucas's goal. But yeah, Hugo Lloris. Hugo Lloris, his 100th clean sheet in the Premier League, which has come, I want to get this exactly right, I'd written it down, 100th clean sheet in 285 Premier League appearances. He's the 16th goalkeeper to do so, but reached it. He's the 9th fastest to get to 100 clean sheets. So that's pretty cool. Weird that it's happened on a day where he had pretty much nothing to do. But, he'll want days like that because that means his defence has played really well and kept everything out. But yeah, little props to him, a guy who's been getting a little bit of criticism in recent weeks as well. That's a very cool achievement. But yeah, so we look at the Premier League table now. It's not quite as fear-inducing maybe as it was. That's kind of the weirdness of what one good result can do. It needs to be more than one good result, but it's kind of what one good result can do. Whereas last week you were looking at like, oh, you really don't want this gap to widen. Now Tottenham, they started 10th before the game because of Arsenal winning. They now jump up to 8th and they're only 6 points off the top 4 with a game in hand. So obviously, game in hand doesn't mean much unless you win it. But if they can just put a run together, they've got Fulham away on Thursday night, which is not going to be a tough game. Fulham Scott Parker's really improved them in the last couple of months. I think something like they've only lost 2 of the last 8, something like that. So it's going to be a really tough game. But they are 18th, and using an expression I overuse, on paper, Spurs should be looking to win that match. Then you've got Palace. Again, potentially not with Zaha back by then. Again, at home, that's a team Spurs should be looking to win. If Spurs harness what they had on Sunday and play like that, keep that, not attack is the best form of defence attitude, but just thinking, we've got quality. Why should we not kind of bring that to a game? And if they keep doing that, there's no reason they can't put a little run together. And then, of course, we've got the Europa League returns with Dinamo Zagreb. What's happened, in case you've missed it, is there was a rule at the start of the season that if any 2 teams in the same city had home games at the same time, the one who, it's not quite coefficient, it's the one who comes into the competition this season on the slightly lower pegging has to kind of switch. So Arsenal winning the FA Cup, wasn't it, last year to get into it? It was the FA Cup, wasn't it? Or winning the Cup to get into it last year means that they took precedence. So they get to keep their home game as the second leg. So there's 2 sides to look at this. I mean, just first off, it's a strange rule, of course. There's no fans in grounds. So you're not looking at a big congregation of people. It doesn't really make sense on that level. I'm led to believe it's more to do with everyone else that's involved, the stadium staff, television people, everything, all of this, medical people. It's still a bit strange, but there you go. It's a UEFA rule. So there's 2 ways to looking at how that benefits or doesn't benefit Tottenham. In terms of a negative, Tottenham had been drawn in a way that they were going to play the home leg second, which is an advantage when you're playing a 2-legged affair, of course. The flip side is, though, it means that by playing the first leg at home, just a few days later, rather than returning from a flight from Croatia to then have to train for the North London derby, they're going to be at home. So obviously you just go home that night and sleep. It's only a negligible thing. It's probably not going to play a huge part on it, but just the fact that Tottenham will be at home and Arsenal will have to travel back, it's just one of those little disruptions to training that could have an effect. Arsenal came back from abroad and beat Leicester, so it's not the be-all and end-all. But what I would say is if Tottenham have any hope of winning the Europa League, then they should believe that they could beat Dinamo Zagreb if they were playing both legs away. They should believe that. There's going to be, I don't think there's going to be any fans in Croatia at all. Pretty sure their rules, restrictions haven't relaxed yet. So Tottenham shouldn't fear the switch. And yes, it gives Mourinho a little bit better preparation time to really be able to start early on the morning of the Friday with the players that he wants to for the North London derby. But yeah, so that's why it's switched. Do I completely agree with it? I understand it, not entirely, but there you go. So yeah, for Tottenham, about momentum. The games are going to come thick and fast still. They're still every 3 days. He's going to have to use all his squad. People are going to be moaning about why this player or that player isn't. But the key is you cannot overplay these players. Gareth Bale, I think there's going to have to be a choice made. You're probably unlikely to be able to start him against Fulham and Palace after having started him against Burnley. The question is, do you see Fulham as being a tougher match because it's away, even though they're below Palace in the table? And is Palace maybe the game where you could bring someone else in, maybe Ali comes in for him and Lucas goes out wide, or Lamella or Bergwijn or any of the other players. These are decisions that Mourinho's going to have to make. He's going to get slated for probably whatever he chooses, because he could go out there and he could pick the strongest team for all 3 games and they get knackered. They lose because they're not as fresh as one of the teams they play, or they could get injuries. He's going to have to rotate. So people coming in that you might not see as your first choice will have to play. That's the beauty of the squad. It's going to have to happen. You'll see changes. You may see changes at fullbacks. I know people get very upset if Doherty or Davies come in. You may see that. Eric Dyer may come in. It's quite funny the way social media reacts. we all want the best players to play, but my goodness, the reaction sometimes when other players have to come in is incredibly extreme. But there you go. It's all part of football fandom. It's part of the fun. It's kind of it's what we it's part of why we enjoy discussing the game so much. So there you go. I think I've covered pretty much everything I can there. If I haven't, I'll try and pick it up in the next video. But yeah, hopefully going to be at Craven Cottage on Thursday night, and then back to Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on Sunday. And the games just keep coming. They do. So hopefully Tottenham can use some of this as a positive momentum, take it on, because like I say, it was pretty cool watching Sunday's game, and that's what we want to see. We want to come out of matches just going, that was cool. That was entertainment. That was great. We don't want to come out of matches kind of like, oh man, what do we talk about now? So yeah. So a bit of more of a positive video. Hopefully you feel that. Yeah, I shall catch you later. As always, stay safe, stay healthy, look after yourselves, and we'll talk again soon. Bye.